Though the name of our show is Mama We Made It with DJ and Reg, we would like to welcome you to the corner of Oaklawn and Riegert.
My brother, good morning, good morning, good morning.
Good morning,
how you doing?
Sir? I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. I do have a question. In service of my t-shirt, in honor of my t-shirt with this teddy bear on it, were you at any point in time in your life, up to including now potentially, a stuffed animal dude?
Man, what a question. No.
Okay.
No. Someone stuffed animals were probably my micronauts. You remember those little cats?
Micronauts, no.
Little flexible figures, man. They stood about this tall. Some cosmic cats. They came in different colors. Micronauts, micronauts.
Okay.
And they were flexible. You could bend them and move them.
Like Stretch Armstrong type flexible?
No. They had like hard joints. So they kind of moved like this. They weren't fluid in any way.
Okay.
Pause. They were more joints, man. Right, joints.
Okay.
So, but I was into the micro. But stuffed animals, I'll be honest with you, man. I don't recall ever having an affinity for stuffed animals. Did you?
No. I have no memory of ever having a stuffed animal that I was attached to in any way. I don't have any memory of having any. I have memories of giving some to my boys when from the era of those plush toys, the little Beanie Baby type thing.
Yeah.
That era. And then back in the day, my mother-in-law worked at Bloomingdale's for a long time, and Bloomingdale's has their own line of kind of teddy bears with the Bloomingdale B on it that my mother-in-law would give to the boys. And so they accumulated some of them. And the Beanie Babies, I think, became like, my oldest had a dolphin for a long time. But me personally, no, I did not grow up with stuffed animals or any Linus type blanket that I didn't have a fixation with any toys like that. But a lot of board games and Battleship, but no stuffed animals.
Yeah, and I remember my cousin. She was a few years younger than me. She was heavy into Raggedy Ann.
Okay.
And Andy, remember Raggedy Ann?
I do, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. So that was the only thing I remember about anything like stuffed animals, etc. So those are the days of Oaklawn. Speaking of Oaklawn, man, we almost called this show the corner of Oaklawn in Riegert.
We did.
Right? Oaklawn Street I grew up on, Riegert Street you spent your formative years on, from how I understand it.
Yeah.
So as we were talking through that, man, what were some of the pros of potentially naming the show?
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Mama We Made It with DJ and Reg. That's DJ, I'm Reg. What were some of the pros you said?
Yeah. What was it in your thinking that was like, you know what, that might be a good name for the show?
Oh, yeah. So when we were kicking the idea around, one of the things that we, as we brainstormed was you moved a lot as a child. I moved quite a bit between my parents and divorce, less so multiple places, though I have lived in multiple places, and more back and forth between two fairly static places, one being U City, Missouri, the other being Des Moines, Iowa. And the commonality of my experience in U City and yours in Battle Creek around a particular house.
Yep.
And I remember us brainstorming on the houses and we pulled up the Zillow or the Redfin of our houses and looking at these little 1,500 square foot, 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom houses. Like, first of all, how did a full family live in the space that we thought were bigger than they were actually? But what that life was like, and for me, Riegert, U City is my emotional home.
Yep.
Even though I only spent off and on 6 years living there, not quite. Went back to a lot and go back, and I got cousins and friends to this day that are, just family in that way. But I have so many emotional memories tied to that environment. My mother, my sisters, my best friends, my neighbors, the games we played out in the street, first kisses, like all that stuff is tied to my experience there, and it is how I see myself, and the rejection of wanting to be, I don't want to say I'm from Iowa. Like, I'm not from Iowa, but I spent the most of my growing up years in Des Moines, Iowa, and I didn't love it, right? I was with my dad and my stepmom. So I say all that to say, Oaklawn and Riegert, as we talked, there was more than enough emotional overlap that we could probably tell stories off of that and kind of what that looked like. It felt like maybe 9 people would get the reference, and so we didn't stay with that as a name. But it is still, this show is still very much about 2 little black boys from Oaklawn and Riegert who have heeded the instruction of the people that were pouring into them. And here we are. And mama, we made it this far, not the 2 of us, but those stories, those days continue to breathe life into us, and to me certainly. And so we saw T-shirts like of Oaklawn and Riegert, like the whole merch. I think we still can see a merch play down there. But for me, that's what it was. This is my emotional home. What was it for you?
Yeah, I still think of it in some ways in terms of a subtitle for what we're doing, man. Mm-hmm. It's same thing you talked about. Going back to what you said, man, the similarities and the profiles of the homes was amazing. When you pulled yours up and showed it to me, we'd never had that conversation before. Yeah. But just for context, man, 112 Oaklawn, Battle Creek, Michigan, is where I spent, I'd say, my formative summers, school years. But 5 different states before 5th grade. Context, man, that's a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom home, had 4 people living in it. 1,100 square feet. Most of my years, we didn't have a shower. It was a bath tub, and that was it. So you took a bath or you took a triangle shower, right, if you were getting ready to roll. And I'm telling you, man, none of it, to your point, felt like a small house to me. It never did. There was a basement, and I remember my uncle created a makeshift bedroom in the basement. Cold as Canada down there, right? I mean,
that's where my mom kept her Manischewitz. It was so cold in the basement.
Okay, exactly, right? Yeah. So I had a space heater down there, pull-out couch, but it was mine. That was my bedroom, man. So anything that had to do with living and existing and subsisting, you went upstairs. You went upstairs to eat. You went upstairs to use the bathroom, but it was my little enclave, man, and that's where I played my music and et cetera. But I still think of what we do, man, in the context of Oaklawn and Riegert. So I was curious about that. I'm going to share with you too, man. We're talking about, childhood. I'm curious, man, as we talk about vulnerability and things we learned or experienced as children. Share something personal with you, and then I'd love to hear if you've experienced anything similar.
Okay.
I'll keep it to a baseline conversation, but my mom sent me a letter a few weeks ago. And it was after the passing of my aunt, who's her sister. And my mom and I have been close as far as I can remember. My mom had me, she was pregnant with me at 16 years old. So she's in class trying to stay awake. High school, right? Trying to stay awake, et cetera, has me. I was born when she was 17. But she wrote me a very heartfelt letter after the passing of my aunt, and she was extremely vulnerable about being a teenager raising a young man. My dad, I don't know if I've expressed this before, I don't call him a heroin addict. He had a heroin addiction. So I was rarely around my dad. I could probably count on one hand the number of times. But she shared things with me, man, that I had never known about her experience raising a young man. And I won't call it any regret, but looking back and acknowledging things that now illuminate with her. And, man, it brought tears to my eyes. And I always let my mom know she did an incredible job. My mom was smart, still is, beautiful, still is, engaging, still is. I remember stories where she would show up to school to pick me up if she had the day off. Otherwise, I was walking home. And the other little brothers in my class, is that your mom? Is that your mom? Yeah, Negro, that's my mom. And you don't need to be asking any more
Your
questions.
mama fine as
Yeah, if we're gonna
frog's
have,
head.
we're gonna leave it right there. I do. I have an extremely beautiful mom, man, and extremely beautiful women in my family. But it broke me down in a way that was like, yeah, at this point in her life, she's sharing this with me and kind of felt all these things all this time. But this event really propelled her to share some things with me, man. And again, all respectful, all wonderful things at this point, but some things that she really wanted to get off her chest in some regards, but also acknowledge at the same time, man. So as you think about childhood and this kind of vulnerability, and as you grow into adulthood, what are some of the things you're experiencing, man? I know you have kids. I don't. What are some of the things you experience?
Both my parents are gone. They've been gone for a minute now. It's fascinating. I grew up, as a child of divorce, and my parents were phenomenal in divorce. And so I got the best of both worlds. And they did whatever their differences. They were married for 20 plus years, had 5 kids, and then get divorced. And so I never really got the nuclear family in that construct kind of way. And to watch them grow as parents and I think friends. My dad got remarried and was married longer to my stepmom ultimately than he was to my mom. To watch them grow was inspiring, right? And to watch them have a faith-centered framework that brought them closer as years went on was
Yeah.
inspiring. And so I carry with me the energy of parents who grew in an open, kind of maturing way that was useful and instructive to me. And so for me now, I find myself really reflective
Yeah.
about me at my age and my parents at this same age
Mm-hmm.
and what that world was like. And so, my father at the age I'm at now, I was 18 and my boys are older than that. And so I think about what he was doing, where he was going, and I just find myself remembering my lived experience with my parents and trying to figure out how they did it all without cussing, because I cuss a lot. How they did it all without any corporal punishment, and I don't lay hands on my children, but thinking about the stories of our generation that wasn't my lived experience. And so the older I get, the more profound I understand the blessing of my parents, right?
Yeah.
And as I'm watching my sons, I am fascinated with the ways that they're growing up, but I'm hard on myself for all the things I didn't do. And,
Wow.
it's tricky because you got to be careful not to say, I'm sorry, son, I didn't teach you that, as if somehow you're looking at a deficiency in them when you say it. And
Yeah,
that's
that's
not what I'm
tricky.
saying at all,
Right.
right? I'm reflecting on things that I did or did not do. I'm not looking at you saying, "Oh, you can't do X, Y, Z. What's wrong with that boy?" That's not it at all. And so I have to be mindful of how I manage it. Like, for example, I am a big reader, less so as I get older because my attention span is suffering like everybody else's in this heavy media, digital, social age that we're in. But my oldest is a more voracious reader than I am. My youngest, I remember putting technology in his hand, thinking, is this too early? And I watch his relationship to reading now, super smart kid, but I feel like he's a digital native in a way that I gave him tech too early. And I wish I had been giving him books the way I was giving books to his older brother. And you can see the generational, space between the two of them. And it has, implications down the road. Not good, not bad, just different. So things like that in this season of life, I find myself looking at as you look at your children's arc and you watch them grow into the fullness of who they're going to be, thinking about how much of it was impacted by things you did or did not do. And I'm self-critical
Yeah.
in that way. And so I find myself grading my paper over and over and over. And at times it creates an anxiety that I don't love. And I have to do a good job of holding that anxiety away from them because I went through a season of depression that I am confident infected my children. And there is a harvest that comes from that season that I'm often concerned about. And I can't say that their anxieties are my anxieties. I just know that I went through a season of struggle and challenge. And no matter how much I think I kept that in my behind closed doorsness of the home, the reality is, your kids know you the way you know them, right? Our kids know us at least as well as we knew our parents. And so I'm in this season of deep reflection and introspection, while at the same time trying to figure out how to continue to pour into everybody else's kids, right? Like it's
Wow.
not good enough to have just raised my two kids the best I could if I haven't touched lives of other young folk. And so, there are young folks in my life who are not so young anymore. One of them might be listening to this conversation as we speak, who are super important to me. And watching them adult, and whenever you get the phone call or text from any one of them having a rough day, how do I show up for them? How do I manifest for them? And how do I deal with the paralysis that comes from I'm not living their life. As much as I feel it, I can't get in it and
No.
handle it for them. And it's a tough thing right now. So I'm trying to manage that as best as possible. But it has me in my feelings for sure.
Yeah, and Purse, I had the pleasure of knowing their mom as well, right? And the things that they learned from her, directly, indirectly, right? That may or may not have a lot to do with you, but it comes from her. Trying to balance that as well into your relationship with them today. I'm sure that's a really, really interesting journey. Man. I
They
can't
are
even
one half of
imagine.
a whole for sure.
Right, right.
Yep. Yep.
Yep.
Or yeah, yeah. I am one half of a whole that makes them up, and it's
Yeah.
you know it. We tell stories about Jill all the time. We keep her memory alive all the time, and at the same point in time, it can be re-traumatizing,
Of course.
right? There are things that I might bring up that they got other shit on their mind. They weren't thinking about it in that moment, and all of a sudden you're like, "Thanks, bro.
Yeah.
Appreciate you. I wasn't thinking about my dead mama at that moment. Thank you very much. Now let me go to my room and handle some shit." Like so, it is, but it's in there. It's in there, and her spirit rocks with us, and and I can see in them things that are of her
Yeah.
in a way that they can't always see. And
Yeah.
sometimes I just
Yeah.
gotta smile at it and keep it moving, much like
Yeah.
seeing a butterfly out in the wilderness, like, oh, that's a beautiful butterfly.
Yeah.
I know what that's of. And so it's interesting. It's interesting. And it's the space of blended familyness as well, right? Because their relationship with my wife, right, for lack of putting names and stuff on it, because I'm weird like that, is amazing to watch, right? Because they met her as friends first. Like they didn't know we were dating till I showed them the ring and said, "Hey, can we get engaged?" And it blew their hair back. They're like, "What you mean engaged to her? Like that's just the homie. What are you talking about?" And so to watch that relationship is very endearing. It is fascinating to watch how they have navigated that space. And so I'm constantly learning from them how they lead with their transparency and vulnerability, but also humility in I'm not mom, I'm not going to play mom. You're not my mom, and I don't want you to play mom, but you're a parent to me, and I value you and love you in that way. And you're not my child, but you my baby in that way. So it's fascinating to watch them work, and I continue to learn a lot from them. And so unwieldy answer to your question, but the things I'm thinking about right now have a lot to do with how I manage my anxiety and keep it from infecting other people, while being inspired by how people are evolving and growing.
You talk about this two halves of a whole, and you're making me think the critical concepts that I learned as a child, man, I'd say 90% of it came from female family members, right? So when we talk about vulnerability, we talk about compassion, we talk about those concepts. I learned that through the lens of strong black women.
Sure.
Never or rarely through a black male lens. So it's a really interesting concept as I developed that as a young black male.
Sure.
What does compassion mean for me? What does vulnerability mean for me? And, a quick story. I'm at home and I live in a condo, 11-unit condo, and on the bottom floor is a business. I'd been seeing this unhomed gentleman. I'm sure at some point unhomed won't be the appropriate thing to call.
Unhoused, I think.
Him, unhoused, yeah. It'll be something else tomorrow, but at the time, this was appropriate, people.
Yes.
So, okay, unhoused cat.
Yeah. A victim of American capitalism, but that's a whole different perspective.
Here we go. Also, drug addict.
Yep.
He's probably mid-20s. I've seen him, walking around the neighborhood, et cetera, and this is a great place if you're unhoused to live because you're going to get fed. People have resources over here. There's a big park across the street. I'd probably be here too. But living right up under my balcony, dude, might not be the move, but that's where home is, right? So let him sleep there for probably about a month. And he found these little bushes and he was tucked in. But when I saw birds and other, I'll call them friends of the outdoors starting to come around, I'm like, dude, you can't be leaving honey buns and stuff right? So I went down and talked to him. Name is Freddie. Saw a drug needle down there. I'm like, Freddie, man, I'll get you some help. This can't be home for you, man. We got to figure it out. Yeah. I know, man. I know. So he takes off. He starts hopping. So I see he had ALS, some other stuff going on. So I'm seeing him hopping. It's like a genuine hop. I'm like, this dude's really struggling. So I see a police officer a couple days later and I let him know, I'm like, man, can we get this guy some help? What can we do? Didn't seem to be overly invested in helping little Freddie out. I hear screaming at night. It's him howling, right? Waking up from a drug nightmare, whatever it is, right? My point is, as I'm seeing the women in my building work through his experience, some giving him water, some dang near know his social security number. They've let him use their phone to call his parents, etc., right? And me entering my conversation to him like, here's how I'm going to handle it. I'm not taking this anymore, etc. By the time I get downstairs, I'm like, dude, you all right, man? Like, you just can't, you know what I mean? So the older I get, my idea and my concept personally of what compassion is has changed, man. And I'm seeing that, right? And it feels more like my mom would have taught me. It feels more like maybe not my grandmother. My grandmother was kind of hardcore at times, right? I think about that, man. I think about what that would mean and what my pops may have taught me around how to handle that. But I feel good about it, man. Now, what's crazy is I hadn't seen him in 2 days. And as much as I was like, dude, you can't be here, I was like, man, I wonder how he's doing. You know what I'm saying? So it was an odd space to be in. I started feeling, I went out and looked, he was gone. But then I got a note from one of the neighbors. Yeah, we saw him. He was over in the bushes, right? I'm like, all right, well, at least he's okay.
Yeah.
So do you find any of these concepts, vulnerability, compassion, do you find them being adjusted, man, as time moves on for you, as you see your kids become adults?
Yeah.
What happens, man?
That's interesting. I'm sure that it is gendered in my world. I don't frame it that way. There's definitely a maternal softness in me that comes from my mother and my sisters. There is a level of, and intellect from my mom as well, but there's a level of intellect and spiritual curiosity that I get from my father. There's probably a level of revolutionary zeal that I get from my oldest brother. There's probably a sense of logic and applied kind of effort from my second oldest brother that is a composite sketch that kind of forms me, and I'm blessed to have all those influences. Here's what I'll say. Watching my son's generation be, for lack of a better word, more progressive, more liberal than our generation is teaching me a lot, right? And that is, their stance on LGBTQ and my evolving space there, their stance on, the diversity of their friend groups. And so I'm continuing to learn and watch how they navigate shared spaces with people that are not like them, right? I was telling you the other day, I have been out of the corporate game now for 10 years, man. And one of the biggest byproducts of being out of corporate space for 10 years is I interact with a lot less people. And significantly less white people than I used to. And there is a health benefit for that. I am much more relaxed and at peace, not dealing with the drudgery of a grind. I'm much more able to read for knowledge acquisition as opposed to deadline acquisition and that type of thing. But I am certainly watching and experiencing the lived experiences of my children in a way that as I get older, I'm getting more liberal. Like, typically you get older, you get more conservative, get off my lawn, that type of thing. I'm like, man, I'm trying to give it all the way. Like here in Portland, we got a huge tax, two big tax bills that came through in the county I live in the last 3 or 4 years. One for unhoused services and investment there. The other for preschool for all. Both of which I'm a big supporter of. But them shit's hit, man. They for real, for real, for real. And there's some pushback about trying to roll back some of those taxes. And I'm just watching the political winds that play out. And so as I get older, man, I am more forgiving, more empathetic, more understanding, less sure of, do I have the answer? And I'm trying to figure out what that means because I can't figure out if I'm ceding ground to this new generation. I'm simply honoring what I've known in my lived experience. What I'll say is I'm much more aware of patriarchy. I'm much more aware of what we used to call male chauvinism than I've ever been in my life.
Yep.
Right. And so I'm trying to be really, really honest about all the ways that my dudeness shows up in the world, particularly for the women that I love and care about, but the women in general, and trying to excise as much of that as possible, man. And it's really, 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 really hard. And so I'm conscious of, historically, the strongest civilizations, and particularly going back to, a lot of the ancient African civilizations, the role of women in society is the single biggest predictor of the health of a society. And the equality of genders, not with gendered roles, but that we are participating equally across governance models and provision models and self-defense and community defense, those measures are predictive of the healthiest societies. And I'm mindful in all the ways that we constrain, marginalize women in this society, women within the Black community. So watching gender wars is the thing I'm paying attention to. While at the same time, I'm also paying attention to the diaspora wars, man. It drives me crazy watching Black folks in the States and Black folks from the islands or the continent go at it over silly, divisive arguments around, the effects of slavery, the effects of colonialism. And so I am fully subscribed to a Pan-African perspective, and we all are Africans in various spaces and states along the journey. And we are one in that way. So, it's a lot on my mind right now, quite frankly, that I'm trying to work through. But I am blessed to be in self-actualization phase of life, right? Like I'm honest about the blessing of some sense of spiritual abundance in my life and trying to be just a force for good as best as possible.
Yeah, and it's what's great is, man, when you reach this point in the journey and you operate in liberation, you can experience an increase in grace, awareness, consciousness, compassion, and for me, a heavy decrease in tolerance for anything evil, racist, oppressive, like zero tolerance for that. So both things are happening, which is also an interesting place to live, especially when you're living in somewhere like Arizona.
How'd you respond to your mom's letter, if I may ask?
I called her and I asked her, was there anything else she wanted to say about the letter? And she was obviously very appreciative that I read it and called her. But because it was at an odd time for both of us with my aunt passing. But I told her I wanted to take a few days before I read it because I was in an odd space. So she was thankful. But the way I responded, man, I said, hey, look, I'm not sure how you would brand the journey of motherhood, but branded A+. We all learn and grow, but I can't imagine being 17 trying to figure out what life is in this colonized environment that we talk about, and at the same time trying to raise someone to not experience certain things, right? So that was my response, was anything you need to hear from me, I'll answer. But just know I felt like my childhood was an awesome childhood. Not without peaks and valleys, but, I think the product will speak for itself. I'm happy with where I am, and she seems to be happy with where I am. So that was my response in a nutshell. I didn't want her to feel anything but proud, happy, and, contributory to my journey.
Yeah, well, she's made an amazing man.
Appreciate it.
And I remember the first time I met Moms, and I'll never forget this trip for as long as I live, me, you, and Buck in L.A.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
the Tony trip.
Yeah.
The walking through the barrio trip in the middle of the night.
Paula
I wouldn't
Abdul.
advise it. But she was so cool, and I think she had the MCA plug back in the day. Yeah.
We were front row, man. Backstage, front row. We didn't have a ride there. I mean, we didn't have a ride back, put it that way.
Right.
We actually did. She actually set us up. Didn't we have a limo situation on the way there?
We were in the green room, hanging out with a cast of characters.
Yeah.
And we hustled up into a conversation because old buddy had the limo. There were some beautiful women with him. We were enamored with them. They're like, come on, ride with us to the party, whatever. And I think he was jealous about the energy they were sending our way. And so we get to the spot and we look up and he has dipped.
And we were there.
Another story for another time.
Crazy time in the morning. But as we do, Kappa Man survived. We made it through. We got back to the crib.
Indeed, with stories to tell. To the people, we want y'all to know that this is therapeutic for us. Like half the time we come on here, we know what we're trying to talk about. It ain't always got a rhyme or reason to it. But just know it is therapy for us. We hope that it is something for you all to take away from that you can rub on a little scar tissue in your life and it helps in some way. We love each other. We love y'all. And we're happy to share and grow in this journey of Mama We Made It with DJ and Reg. Have a great day.
See you soon.
Mama,